about the Southport atrocities ever since that fateful day, the authorities have hid behind legal processes and bureaucracies.
The Prime Minister is continuing to deliberately mislead the British people to continue suiting his own narrative. And I'm afraid...
Have you ever watched a political career implode in real time? That's exactly what happened in Southport, as Keir Starmer faced a hostile crowd of his own supporters. But why did Labour members turn on their leader so dramatically?
You staged this bonfire! Yeah, you staged it! You staged it!
All of this nonsense that he couldn't say anything is simply untrue. And it's not true to say that the nature of terrorism has changed.
From controversial comments on a murder case to economic policies that left the crowd cold, Starmer's speech was a perfect storm of political missteps. But the real story here goes deeper. It's about a party at war with itself and a leader who's lost his way. Keir Starmer's Southport speech took a disastrous turn from the very beginning. And it all started with his ill-advised comments on a local murder case. As Starmer approached the podium, the crowd was already on edge, their expectations high and their patience thin. Little did they know that their leader was about to drop a bombshell that would send shockwaves through the audience and beyond.
Now you, the British people, are being gaslit. You are being lied to. While the people always sensed there was something unusual.
You have failed to do your job and ask the real questions. Well, I am telling you now, and I hope this goes out, you have failed.
Starmer, in what can only be described as a monumental lapse in judgment, decided to address the gruesome Axel Ruder-Cabana murder case. He claimed to have intimate knowledge of the case, stating that he had been briefed on the details long before they were made public. This revelation left the crowd stunned and confused. Why would the Labour leader have such privileged information about a local crime? And more importantly, why would he choose to disclose this now, in front of a crowd of supporters? The tension in the room was palpable as Starmer continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing discomfort among his audience. He went on to describe specific details of the case, information that had not been widely circulated. As he spoke, murmurs of discontent began to ripple through the crowd. Some supporters exchanged puzzled glances, while others shook their heads in disbelief. But the real problem wasn't just Starmer's questionable decision to discuss an ongoing murder investigation.
Starmer called it a terror attack before terrorism charges had been announced.
It was the glaring contradiction between his current admission and his previous statements on the matter. Just weeks earlier, Starmer had publicly declared that he had no prior knowledge of the case. Now, here he was, contradicting himself in front of his own supporters. The hypocrisy was not lost on the crowd, and the first seeds of doubt were sown. As Starmer delved deeper into the details of the Axel Ruder case, comparisons were inevitably drawn to his handling of other sensitive information in the past. Many in the audience remembered his response to the Finsbury Park attack, where he had been praised for his discretion and respect for the ongoing investigation.
Yesterday, Keir Starmer admitted that he knew the details about Axel Ruder-Cabana's background long before they came out.
This stark contrast only served to highlight the magnitude of his current misstep. The crowd's initial reaction to Starmer's comments on the murder case was a mix of shock, confusion, and growing anger. Some supporters sat in stunned silence, while others began to whisper among themselves. A few even stood up and walked out, unable to reconcile this new version of Starmer with the leader they thought they knew. As Starmer finished his ill-fated remarks on the Axel Ruder case, the damage was already done. His credibility had taken a severe hit, and the trust of his supporters was hanging by a thread. But little did they know, this controversy was just the beginning of what would become a speech marred by one misstep after another. As Keir Starmer attempted to salvage his speech after the Axel Ruda debacle, he stumbled headfirst into another minefield, his economic proposals.
But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details.
The Labour leader, once seen as a beacon of hope for the working class, now stood before his supporters with a plan that left many scratching their heads in disbelief. Why would a Labour leader, traditionally associated with workers' rights and social welfare, suddenly embrace austerity measures? The answer, it turns out, might shock even his staunchest critics. Starmer's economic vision, a far cry from Labour's 2019 manifesto under Jeremy Corbyn, included plans for public spending cuts and potential tax rises. He justified these measures as necessary to fill a black hole in public finances left by the previous Conservative government. But as he confidently delivered his economic plan, the disconnect between his policies and the crowd's expectations became painfully apparent. The Labour leader's assertion that if this path were popular or easy, we would have walked it already, was met with a chorus of boos that echoed through the hall. It was a moment of reckoning, as supporters realized that Starmer's tough choices meant abandoning the party's traditional economic stances in favor of policies that seemed to align more with centrist or right-leaning agendas. As Starmer continued to outline his economic vision, the crowd's disapproval grew more vocal. Long-time Labour supporters felt a deep sense of betrayal, watching their leader distance himself from the party's previous commitments to public spending and social welfare. The room crackled with tension as Starmer's words seemed to widen the chasm between himself and his base. But the real shock? Both camps, those who saw Starmer's plan as a necessary evil and those who viewed it as a betrayal of Labour values, were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle.
I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this.
Starmer's economic U-turn hinted at deeper, undisclosed pressures. What unseen factors were truly driving Labour's economic strategy, and how would they impact the average British voter? As supporters took to social media to express their frustration, accusing Starmer of selling out the party's core values, the Labour leader seemed oblivious to the growing discontent. His attempts to broaden his appeal by moving away from traditional Labour policies were backfiring spectacularly, alienating the very people who had placed their trust in him. The economic portion of Starmer's speech became a microcosm of his leadership, well-intentioned but fundamentally misaligned with his party's values. As more supporters stood up and walked out, unable to reconcile this new version of Labour with the party they thought they knew, Starmer pressed on, seemingly unaware of the political tragedy unfolding around him. As the dust settles on Keir Starmer's disastrous Southport speech, Labour finds itself at a crossroads. The party's internal struggle, laid bare for all to see, raises serious questions about its future. Can Starmer reconcile Labour's traditional values with his vision for broader appeal?
Is not consistent with Keir Starmer's previous actions. During the 2017 Finsbury Park terror attack,
The opposition. You have failed to ask whether lockdown was functioning. Do you understand?
Shall we go on in?
Thousands of people have died.
Or has he irreparably damaged his relationship with the party's core supporters? The implications for UK politics are profound. With Labour's approval ratings in freefall, the next general election looms large. Voters in traditional strongholds are increasingly disillusioned, and the Conservatives may seize this opportunity to solidify their grip on power. Starmer's leadership missteps could have far-reaching consequences, potentially reshaping the political landscape for years to come. As we watch Labour grapple with its identity crisis, one thing is clear: the path forward will be anything but smooth. Stay tuned for our next video, where we'll explore how Nigel Farage tears into Keir Starmer after banned elections.